Hey everybody, thanks for stopping by my channel. A square pillow isn't square. This is the place where you will learn anything and everything you wanted to know about home deck sewing. This pillow cover is one that's a particular favorite of one of my designers. So since I had to make it for, I had to make some of these for her, I thought I'd show you how we do it. It has a small flange. It can be self fabric or contrast fabric, and it has a little inverted pleat on the corner. This kind of pillow is really classy looking. It has a nice little soft edge, but it's more interesting than just a welt. And it's not as fussy or feminine as a ruffle or a pleated flange might be. This one, since the flange is so small, it's only about 3/4 of an inch, it holds itself up nicely and it makes a nice, professional, clean, tailored, but very pretty border around the pillow. So today I'm going to show you how to make this one. First thing you do is determine the size of the fabric that you're going to cut by measuring your pillow. The correct way to measure for a pillow cover is one of the first videos that I made, so if you are not sure how to do that, go ahead and watch that video. I am going to make this cover to finish at 25 inches, so I'm going to cut my fabric at 26 inches square. So the first thing we're going to do is cut two 26-inch squares. The front is out of one fabric, the back and the little flange are out of another fabric. So I have my two 26-inch squares. I also marked the top of the solid fabric, so I always have my direction going consistently the same way. And the only other thing you have to cut is what's going to be our little flange. The strips that I cut are 3 inches wide, and the way to determine how long these need to be is you take the length of your 4 sides, add those together, and then for each corner, for the pleat on each corner, you have to allow 4 inches. And then I'll usually add about 6 or 8 inches just for my join and just for a little cushion. Also, another thing to consider, I always do mark the direction of my strips as well, so that my tops are always going in the same way when I put this on. And it's always nice to try and reduce the number of seams that are in this flange. Because this is a flat flange, other than on the corners, seams are more visible than they would be if it was gathered or pleated. So I try and reduce the number of seams that I have by just cutting my strips as long as I can with the fabric allowed. If you don't have enough length to do one continuous strip, then you're going to take 2 pieces and simply seam them together. You can seam them together in a straight seam like this, or you can do them the way that I do it, which is on a diagonal. I'll take my fabric strips that are running in the same direction, my same up direction. I'll turn one over on a 45-degree angle, and I will pin the diagonal from corner to corner here. I'm going to sew this line, and then when I do that, I get what will look like a bias seam. But in either case, I do try and make sure that I have pieces that are long enough that at least a seam isn't on the very top of the pillow, which is kind of a focal point of the pillow. So I do want to make sure if I have a seam that it falls somewhere down in the lower third of the pillow or on the bottom. So the next thing we're going to do is just put our pieces together, press our seams open, and then we're going to just press this in half, like so. Lengthwise all the way down the length. Alright, I've decided that I'm going to do bias seams. I've sewn that, my little extra piece, I didn't have quite enough length to do a continuous strip, so I had to piece a little bit on there. I sewed that on. I'm trimming my seam allowance. I'm going to press open all the seams on your strip. And simply fold it in half lengthwise and press all the way down entire length of your strip, fold it in half. Alright, this is the bottom of my pillow front. I always start on the front and I always start on the bottom. Again, my little seamed piece that I had to add, I'm going to make sure that I start on the end of my strip, where not only my direction's going right, but my seam will be on the bottom. And I usually start somewhere not too close to the corner, usually not right in the middle. I'll start about here, right now. And I've allowed a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around. And I'm going to leave a nice tail so that I have room to do my join. And I'm going to start just by sewing this on about 1/2 inch away from my seams. Line up my edges, and I'm going to start sewing this on. And as you know, if you've watched any of my other videos, I don't ever do truly square corners on any of my pillows. So let me show you how I do this. I'm going to take this flange up on my taper. So it's going to look like this. And when I get a few inches away from the corner, I'm going to leave room because I'm going to put my pleat in. Back up a little bit if you want to. What I do is, and you can do this by measuring if you want to. Let me find a little seam gauge. On this pillow, I'm tapering up about 5/8 to 3/4 of an inch at the point where I'm going to make my pivot. I'm going to fold this back about the same distance, 5/8, 3/4 of an inch, and I'm going to put a pin, or you can do a clip. And this is the point where we're going to add the 4 inches that we need for our pleats. I'll start at that point. As you can see, hopefully you can see this, I'm going to make a mark 4 inches down. And I'm also going to make a mark in the middle at 2 inches. And now what I do is I will, in this direction, I will line up these 2 pins like this, put my thumb right where that pin goes, and pin that together. And then I'll open this up and I'll use this pin, I'll flatten, kind of finger press that fold that you can probably, sorry, lots of strings. See that fold there? I'm going to line the center pin up on my fold. Got my nice taper going. I'm going to base this on, continuing in my 1/2 inch seam allowance on my trim. I'm going to lift my presser foot a little and ease over that thick point, and I'm just going to sew right to the middle of this pleat, right where that pin is. Now that that's sewn in place, I can take these 2 pins out, and sometimes I'll put one of those pins through the half of the pleat I haven't sewn yet, just to kind of help hold it in place like that. Now I'm going to back up right on my same stitching line, and I'm going to clip. Now as you'll see, this came apart. This is just a fold, and I've taken that pin out. I'm just going to clip right where that fold is, right in the middle of my pleat, right to just up to my stitching line. Don't go past that little point where you stop stitching. It's a little 1/2 inch clip. So it's going to look like this right now. Now just go back over your stitching, stop again, right in the middle of your pleat on that exact same point, right at the tip of your clip. And now lift your presser foot. I have a knee lift, so I don't need my hand to do it. Rotate your pillow 90 degrees. Grab this side and simply rotate it. This is why it's nice to have these layers pinned together so they stay nice and straight. And now continue stitching. And I will now taper out. See how I've got my little space there? I will now taper this back out to the side of the pillow, and for most of the rest of the pillow up until the next corner, I will sew straight along that seam, 1/2 inch seam allowance, and you'll see what we've got now on the front of the pillow is our really cute little pleat right there. Got a nice sharp point on our corner, and we're going to have a nice cute little pleat right there. So I'm just going to do that on all the other 3 corners and all the way around my pillow. Now we're going to do our, gosh, so many strings. Now we're going to do our join, and the way that I do that is I just allow a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Imagine a 1/2 inch seam allowance that's sewn down. I'll line this up, and I will just line up those 2 edges like so, and cut. And that way, I know that once I do a 1/2 inch seam allowance, it's going to be the right size. And this is why I like to leave, plenty of room to work with. There's no reason to struggle with this. If you leave enough space, put your right sides together, open this up, and just sew in your 1/2 inch seam allowance. Finger press this open like this, fold it in half, and it'll fit perfectly. Just go back on there and finish sewing. This is a good time now just to check your little pleats. Make sure that they're the way that you like them. There's no catching, or you don't have your fabric caught anywhere. You don't have anything going on that you don't think looks good. At this point, I am going to put an invisible zipper in the bottom of this pillow. If you don't want to do that, just skip ahead, and I'll show you how to put the front on the back and sew it closed. And you would just leave an opening at the bottom to turn it right side out and insert your pillow and sew it closed. If you want to know how to do this, I'm just going to do it really fast on video because I've done a couple videos on applying invisible zippers. So I'm going to go ahead and show you that I'm doing it, but I'm not going to go through the step-by-step. I do want to mention too that sometimes I will serge all the way around all of my raw edges for a professional finish on the inside, especially if it's going to get cleaned or laundered a lot, and I just want to keep my edges and my seams from fraying and decomposing too much. But in this case, I'm going to at least do it on the bottom edge because this particular fabric has just frays a lot, and I just don't want to worry about the threads getting caught in the teeth of my zipper. So as you can see, I've just serged the bottom edges of my fabrics. So here I have my front and my back, bottoms facing, right side up, and I'm going to go ahead and get my zipper ready to apply. Okay, so now whether or not you put a zipper in, the next step is the same. If you don't have a zipper in, you're going to put both of your pieces right sides together like a regular pillow, and you're going to leave an opening in the middle to turn it. In this case, I've got my zipper in, so I'm going to stop and start sewing at either end of my zipper. But the important thing here is simply to make sure that the side that has the stitching on it from when you put your flange on, you want that side up. So I'm going to go ahead and pin this together with my front side on the top. And when you are pinning your corner, you just want to make sure that that's just folded down out of the way like that. Hold it in place, line up your corners, and I'm just going to pin that in place like that. Once it's all pinned, I'm going to take it to the machine and we'll show you how to stitch it. Alright, we're all pinned, ready to sew. The first tip is make sure that once you have, if you're using a zipper, make sure that once you've pinned it all in place, that your zipper is open, because once you sew all the way around, if you forget to open your zipper a little bit, you're never going to be able to get in there to turn the pillow right side out. So make sure your zipper's open enough to turn it. Going right on top of your stitching is the main way that you're going to ensure that your corner stays as perfect as it was when you first made it and applied that flange. So I'm going to do a nice, super strong back tack where that stress point is, and I'm going to feel and make sure that there's nothing caught under there. I'm going to stitch right on top of my previous stitching, and I'm going to stop exactly on the pivot point from my original stitching line. So I'm following this stitching exactly. I'll rotate, I'll just make sure that it's out of the way, and I'm going to again stay completely on top of that stitching line. And I'm walking it over here because it's kind of thick. And that's all there is to doing the corners. Now just make sure that you sew right along or just inside your original stitching line on the rest of the pillow. Do that on all four sides, and we're going to be done. Just turn it right side out, and push your corners out. And from the inside, I'll grab the fabric, and the outside, I'll grab the corner pleat, and I'll just pull it out until I get my nice sharp point. And there'll be a little bit of a bend to it, but that's okay. That's how it's supposed to look. All right, all four corners look really nice. So next step, make sure this is open all the way. I'm going to stuff it. And the way I always do this, do a big karate chop in the middle, fold it in half, use my arm to hold it in place, grab my two corners, and put it in. And then I always get my corner of my insert and really shove it all the way into the corner of my pillow cover like this. Get my corners all in there, all 4 of them. All right, now all we have to do is zip it up. And that zipper, as you'll see, is pretty much invisible, as it's supposed to be. And here we have our beautiful pillow cover with a pleated flange. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing to my channel so you see when I post new videos. Thanks so much for watching, and happy sewing.